Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the woman who, Richard Avedon said, from Vreeland's rib came Polly Mellen. And from that day on, Eden never looked better. Polly Mellen. Okay, so that video was a little long, and I remember being at CFDA, we couldn't quite get him to stop talking, but, you know, he's a legend too, so we let Dick go on. And he was talking about you. Okay, Polly, you were born on June 18th, 1924, in West Hartford, Connecticut.
Correct.
That makes you how old now?
88.
That's pretty fabulous. You're a Gemini. Do you agree with the star signs?
Yes.
Geminis, my little research into it says Geminis love to talk, which is good for us, not just idle chatter. Their driving force is their mind, intellectually inclined, probing people and places, bright, quick-witted, life of the party. Boredom is toxic. They're prompt in speech and quick in whim. And a lightness of spirit and youthful exuberance, helping to appear forever young with a skip in their step. I think that describes you. So I read that you have had a very stylish family. Describe what that means.
Well, my father and mother were a little bit different. They loved the clothes meant something to them, but they weren't superficial. My father was a very big-time insurance man, very successful. And my mother, at 250 pounds, loved to wear bright colors and bright prints. And it was a part of our life, but a small part, but something that meant something to all their four daughters and one son. And they, especially my mother, dressed us and loved to dress us. And my sister Patty, who was 13 months older than I was, always wore blue, I wore pink. And we dressed alike.
Did that bother you?
Not until I was in my early teens, and then I wanted to, as the youngest of the four girls, I wanted to be myself and express myself.
Okay. Tell me about the Chanel pajamas that your mother had. Apparently she had them copied in the West Indies in lots of fabrics.
Yes, in Antigua. She had one pair of Chanel pajamas, very wonderful looking pajamas with the cut out monogram. And when she went to Antigua, she took her pajamas to a dressmaker in town in St. John's and had them copied for $3.
So she was clever.
$3.
So your parents had a house in Antigua. Did you spend a lot of time down there?
Yeah. My father, with four other men, started a club in Antigua called the Mill Reef Club. And we went as often as we could and loved it. And they're both buried there in St. John's Cemetery.
Is that where your dad wore his white terry cloth blazer?
No.
Where was that?
That was where we went in the summer, which is an island called Fisher's Island. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting you bring that up, because he had a white terry cloth, double-breasted, very chic blazer with his monogram in bright blue right here.
Sounds like a very chic upbringing. I read that you said that your sisters were very bright and capable. Explain that.
They were very good at school, And exactly what you just said, Fern, but I was not.
So did they make you feel inferior?
Yes, a little bit. I've always had, you may not agree with me, but I do have an inferiority complex and still do. I'm never completely sure I've done the right thing, but when I do it, when I was a working girl, I had a passion for what I was doing, so I just went ahead and that passion took over. And so a certain kind of holding back was not a strong suit for me.
Now, we'll get to when you were doing
You'll
that work.
get to that, right?
Your sisters and your brother, what did they all go on to do and accomplish in their lives?
My sister Patty was a housewife, married a fellow called Peter Wall. Leslie, also a housewife, married Robert Tapscott, and Nancy married Frank Belknap. She was in fashion. She was a buyer at Lord & Taylor and went on to being managing editor of Glamour.
Okay. So eventually, did you feel like you rose to the occasion in your career with them?
I'm Nancy being quite a bit older than I was, 15 years, I never really got to know her until I was grown up, in my 20s, maybe a little 18, something like that. But my yen for fashion had strongly started.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness for us. Do you want to tell us about your mother's needlework and the competition she entered, which Dick
She
referred
did
to?
a 3-panel screen, very Chinese screen that was, she got from French and Company, had it, after she'd finished the panels, made it into a 3-panel screen. It was wonderful, and the little sheep they were in all different stitches. It's fantastic, and my sister Leslie owns it, and it's in her dining room as we speak. And when the judges came, people from all over the world presented their needlework. And it's true, Mother won the award and the gold thimble, and Queen Mary got honorable mention, which
Nice to know
I
it
thought
wasn't
was
fixed.
really exciting.
That's great. So when you were growing up, you were also influenced by a lot of the dolls. You all dressed dolls, I think.
Yes.
And then I read it was about movies, which a lot of people were always influenced by movies and movie stars. I read you were a big fan of Carol Lombard, Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich.
Yes.
And then the guys, Gary Cooper, Fred Astaire. And you wouldn't let anybody come see a William Holden movie with you because
Never.
you wanted to see it by yourself.
Yes. And sometimes I remember once watching Picnic, and I had such a crush on William Holden, and somebody tapped me on the shoulder behind me, and they said, "Polly, you were here when we came in." I said, "I know, I'm going to see it again." Shh, go away. There's a story that goes along with William Holden, which was when I was on my honeymoon with Louis Bell. We were in Portofino, and we went to the Spendido, and then we went down to a place where there was a wonderful pool, swimming pool, that went on into the ocean. And so and there were rafts, 2 rafts out in the ocean.
Kind of float.
And so I quickly went into the ocean and got onto one of the rafts. And I noticed a fellow on the other raft who said, why don't you come over here onto my raft? And it was William Holden. It's true. And I quickly, if you can believe this, I dove into the water and swam home to where my husband was sitting. I don't know if I regretted that or not, but anyway.
I think that would go on the regret list that you didn't
Yeah,
swim
well,
over to that
I have a
dock.
couple of those. He was gorgeous.
Great
I mean,
story.
brown, white trunks. Oh, heaven.
That's a great story. Those were days to idolize Hollywood stars. Is there anyone today that you think has a sense of style to emulate?
Let me think about that.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Back to you. You went to the famous Miss Porter's prep school in Farmington, Connecticut in the early 40s. You were a year behind Gloria Vanderbilt and just ahead of Jacqueline Bouvier.
Yes.
Can you describe those days, your own classmates, what that was like?
Oh, it was wonderful. I didn't go to Farmington right away. I went to the Ethel Walker School for 2 years, 2 dreadful, difficult, awful years. And I was a terrible student and left the Ethel Walker School because they told my father and mother that they felt my body had developed ahead of my brain. So I always wanted to go to Farmington anyway because all my sisters went there. Why couldn't I go there too? Why did I have to go to the Ethel Walker School and wear a uniform? And I was the youngest girl in the school. It was miserable and a terrible student, but a good tennis player and a good horseback rider.
Oh, important. After Miss Porter's, you chose not to go to college. Was that a family decision or just yours?
No, I couldn't get into college. Was that a family decision? No, it was a...
So choosing not to go is a nice way to put it then.
Yes.
You were a nurse's aide at an army hospital during World War II.
Yes.
That had to have been difficult, but caring for patients there, but probably good experience for dealing with the fashion industry.
Incredible experience. We were sent to after the nurse's aides, if you had 1,500 hours, you went to an army hospital. And I was sent to a hospital with my sister Patty and some other friends to Ashford General Hospital, which is the White Sulphur Springs in Virginia, West Virginia. And I was put on the detail of meeting the airplanes that the wounded came off. And it was an incredible experience, but something that you remember and something that brings on a certain seriousness in you. And there was some humor in it because I can remember walking with the gentlemen, the medics who were carrying the stretcher of one of the wounded soldiers who would look up and say, "My God, I've gone to heaven." and that made me feel very good, you know.
So you were the angel. In 1949, you moved to New York. Was that by yourself? Did you have roommates? Do you remember where your first apartment was?
Yes, we went to Mrs. Hickson's at 1155 Park Avenue.
Not bad.
And then we moved on to Mrs. Outerbridge Horsey's brownstone, which took, the elite young women, which was very, and then I was working at Lord & Taylor.
And your sister helped you get
that job.
That's where she worked. And you were in the college shop.
That's
Remember?
the closest I ever got to college. the college shop at Lord and Taylor, and I was started out in the sweater department, which is obvious, and then moved on to being head of the college shop, and then my career.
Is that when you kind of
continued.
thought you can have a career in fashion at those days?
Yes.
But then you were moved quickly to the display department working on windows.
Yes.
What did they notice about you that made them move you to that area?
That I don't know. I think just my deep feelings about fashion and about fantasy and about, if you remember the Lord and Taylor windows at that time, the Christmas windows were extraordinary. You know, they came, we made them in this.
They come up from the.
Yeah, and they came up by elevator. I think that they knew that I was a little restless, just being in the college shop and selling clothes. I wanted to do something a little more creative. And Henry Callahan, who was the head of the windows display, talked to me and hired me, and
That was it. I read at that time you learned two truths about yourself, that you liked being behind the scenes and that you needed to create a dream.
yes, that's right. And that continued, Fern.
Absolutely it did. You went from Lord and Taylor to your next job at Mademoiselle, which was my alma mater and first job.
Really?
What did you do there and for how long?
Well, believe it or not, I was the hat editor.
Hat editor.
And I didn't even own a hat. But I did own a little French beret. So every time I went into the hat market, I had to put on my French beret. That was it.
And while you were there, Sally Kirkland, who was your sister's friend,
Yes.
and she was she was at Vogue at the time.
Yes.
But she wanted to introduce you to the fashion editor at Harper's Bazaar,
Yes.
who was Diana Vreeland.
Yes.
What was your reaction to that opportunity?
Fright. Fright. Sally wanted me to have Diana take the job, have me take the job of an editor that was leaving, named Constance Woodworth, who was this glamorous, fantastic woman. And I said, please don't do that to me, Sally. I can't do that. I'm sick. Please don't make me do that. She said, I am getting you. You are going to meet Diana Vreeland and Polly. Now, really, this is ridiculous. It could be a great opportunity for you. So she talked me into it. Oh, I'll never forget it. And we sat in Henry Halper's drugstore on 56th Street and Madison Avenue, because the bazaar was on, I believe, the 10th floor. And Sally took out of her bag and said, I have a little brandy here. Do you want me to put it? I said, no, that's all right. Are you coming up with me? No, you're going up by yourself. And I did. And it was a wonderful, wonderful interview. Great fun.
Do you remember what you were wearing and what she wore?
Oh, what I was wearing? No, I don't remember what I was wearing. I do know I was wearing little white gloves.
Okay.
And
what was Mrs. Vreeland wearing?
I think Mrs. Vreeland, I'm either confusing this for another time when I went to see Mrs. Vreeland with my two children. But I think she was wearing, I can't remember what she was wearing at that time.
Okay.
But at another time when I went to see her with my two children, a boy and a girl, bless their hearts, I love them so much. We walked in and Mrs. Vreeland had on a gray flannel skirt and a turtleneck sweater in gray and medallions hanging on gold chains. And I remember her saying, now, Polly, I've seen you. Now I want to be with your children. You go do something. So she closed, the door was closed, and the two children were in there, and I thought, they're never going to forgive me, ever. And when I when I was called to come back into the office where Mrs. Vreeland was, Baker had on her earrings, and Leslie had on a couple of the chains, and they were laughing and having a ball.
Well, that's a very nice side of Mrs. Vreeland to hear
Yeah,
about.
the only trouble was Mrs. Vreeland every Christmas would send me 2 beautiful little dresses for my 2 children because she forgot that Baker was a boy. Well, Baker, I wish you were here.
Well, he did wear the earrings, so I think
But he
that
did
threw
wear
her
the
off.
earrings, but he didn't take that farther, thank God.
So after that first meeting with her, you were hired
Yes.
at Harper's Bazaar, and
Yeah.
you went from a hat editor, now you're the lingerie and foundations editor.
Yes.
Can you imagine if they had all those editors now? And then promoted to coats and suits.
Correct.
And then you were asked to go on shootings. She wanted you to go on a shoot. So you were at Harper's Bazaar for 2 years. Carmel Snow was the editor-in-chief.
Yes.
And I read she gave you some of the best advice of your career.
Yes.
Should I remind you what I read it was?
Yes, sure.
Go see every designer, everywhere, big or small. You never know where the next talent is coming from.
That's right.
Open your eyes, have a little humility, and let go of ego.
That's right.
It's excellent advice.
That,
And you absolutely took that for the rest of your career.
yes, I did. It was, it taught me a certain kind of humility, and you know, you never knew who was going, I mean, you had to see everything because you don't want to miss out on a talent. And I kept that always in my heart. And I think today it's wonderful what young people are doing, and there's much more action and help with younger people than there was in the days when I was.
So your first shoot now at the magazine is with Dick Avedon, who initially
when I
didn't
went
want
back.
to work with you because he said you were too noisy.
That's right.
What did that mean? Were you just...
It means that I didn't, when I was moved, I expressed myself, and I guess it was a bit much for Dick.
Okay.
And so he said, I can't work with her. She's just too noisy, Diana. Get me somebody else. She said, I want you to work with her, and I will talk to her. And she did, and I did a shoot with
Audrey Hepburn.
With Audrey Hepburn, and she wore
First shoot.
a Seal Chapman yellow voile dress. It was wonderful, and I spoke with her, and I sat behind Dick, way behind, and I did not speak. And when the shoot was over, Dick looked at me and said he was very pleased. He came into the dressing room and said, well, you never said a word. I said, I know. I know that you think I'm too noisy, so I want to work with you again, and I needed to use that self-control. Well, he said, you must never do that again, ever, because the feedback that you can give me when I'm working, I feel it and sense it, and you must not hold back. If you know what you're doing and you like what you're doing, let it go. And I did.
And a new fashion team was born. But then, 1952, you left it all for love and married your first husband, Louis Bell. What was his business?
His business was, he was the coat and suit buyer at John Wanamaker.
Okay.
Strawbridge and Clothier.
Mm-hmm. So you had 2 children and lived on the Philadelphia Main Line for 10 years.
Yes.
How did you adjust from that fast lane of fashion to that life?
Well, easily. First of all, we had a wonderful life. My marriage was difficult, but I had my 2 children, and I didn't want to go back to work because I wanted to raise my children and be with them during the formative years. And then we realized that the marriage was not working, and we were divorced after 8 years.
So then 10 years later, in 62, you moved to a gardener's cottage in Tuxedo Park and actually thought about going back into hospital work.
Yes.
But you didn't.
And I wanted to do something what I thought was maybe more meaningful, more meaty, more to do with humanity, and that changed, as you know.
We know, and that was a pivotal time in society.
Yes.
Women were being noisy then, and the pill, Vietnam, Warhol, Betty Friedan.
Yeah.
And then you met, and I love this name also, Henry Wigglesworth Mellen.
Yeah.
Where did you meet him, and what did he do?
Henry was, he worked at Steinway pianos, and Henry has perfect pitch, so he helped with the sales of Steinway pianos and pitching them, and worked with wonderful, talented people, one being Dave Brubeck, who unfortunately we just lost.
Well, and the Steinway piano space is kind of questionable now, what's going to happen with that building. That's been in the papers this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is too bad. And I read you have 4 children, so were 2 of those Henry's children? Then?
Yes, and the girls are 3 months apart, and the boys are Palmer. The boys are, Palmer was born in yesterday, December 11th, and so Baker was born the following April. So it was like having 2 sets of twins.
Busy ass. And then Mrs. Vreeland called you back after she moved over to be editor-in-chief of Vogue.
Yes.
In 1966, you joined her there. She asked if your passport was in order. Because your first big assignment was to go to Japan with Dick.
For 5 weeks.
The most expensive shoot in history.
That's
Talk
true.
about that to start with?
15 trunks. Well, it was a fur caravan, so naturally it was pretty expensive, but it was an extraordinary experience, and I came back more Japanese than the Japanese. I mean, it completely affected my life. I mean, their habits, the change, everything you ate, every taste sensation. I mean, every smell. I mean, it was just an extraordinary experience. And we went to a Zen Buddhist monastery, and I wanted to go to first prayers, but that was 5 o'clock in the morning. So I went to second prayers, which was 7 o'clock in the morning. And it was something that affected me, and that I have taken on. It gave me a certain feeling, a spiritual feeling, a sense of discipline, all of those things that I feel one needs to make it on one's journey through life.
Incredible. How many people were on that shoot, your entourage?
One model, Verushka, and a sumo wrestler who we got in Japan, and
I read you got like the tallest sumo wrestler in
yeah,
Japan.
7'1" he was, and I think there were Dick had 3 assistants. One came from Tokyo, and the other 2 went with us, and the very great, famous Ara Gallant, who did the hair. Whistles for Ara Gallant.
Okay, so let's talk about some of your groundbreaking shoots. because you often went to the erotic, it seemed. Was that for a reaction, or was it just reflection on what was happening in the world, or that the clothes dictated that? Like, let's talk about Lisa Taylor in 1975 with Helmut Newton and Saint-Tropez.
That was a shoot that was called The Story of O. And I talked with Helmut about it, and it took on, we had 2 models and 1 male model. And we wanted to do what I felt was going on in the world with young women, which is their growing up and their feelings for their sexual feelings and their feelings also of holding back. Push when you mean pull. And the more I talked to Helmut, who would egg me on and make me explain a little more, and then Lisa, and I can't remember the other girl's name, isn't that awful? Really got into it and understood it, and so did Peter Keating, and it developed into the shoot it became. I'm very proud of that shoot. I think it looks great even today.
Oh, are you all familiar with that photograph? Yeah. Great. And working with Helmut Newton was not very Miss Porter, huh?
Now, Fern, as you get a little older, and at a certain time in my life, I was having a very serious love affair, and I think that teaches you a lot of things. It's an arousal of yourself and knowing yourself, and I think that I thought that was very modern. I wanted to bring it into my sittings, if it was right, if it worked into the sitting that made it sense. If it didn't seem like it made sense, then I wouldn't go in that direction. But in this case, with this particular sitting, it was...
It certainly did make sense.
Yeah, it made great sense, I thought.
And then what about the groundbreaking, controversial Deborah Turbeville photos?
Yes.
Of swimsuits in a derelict bathhouse?
We shot them in the baths. They were vacant baths downtown. And Debbie and I went to look at the baths, and I came back, and we talked to Grace and Alex, and said we thought that would be a wonderful setting for the bathing suits, as opposed to just going to a pool or even going to the West Indies or something like that. I mean, it's not that going to the West Indies wouldn't be great too, but Debbie was very turned on, and so was I, because the baths reminded me of old pictures I'd seen of Roman baths, and it had a great interest to us both. And Debbie took 5 or 6 models, and placed them very specifically into the scenario and the situation. I think the pictures are amazing. When we were doing the pictures, I never thought they looked reminiscent of possible German atrocities or anything like that. I didn't think they were difficult to look at. It didn't occur to me. I mean, each model is on her own. They're not it isn't. It's a tableau. It's true, but each model is detached from the other model. And I love the pictures. When they came in, it was a shock. I think Grace.
This is Grace Mirabella, who was the
Yes.
editor of the magazine.
Wonderful editor, and she wasn't sure of them, and I could tell that because they called me in to see the pictures, and Alex said, "Polly, I think you should leave the art department."
This is Alex Lieberman, for those who don't know.
And go for a walk, he said. So I did, and I realized that they were a bit much. I mean, I could see that they always spoke a lot when the shoots came in and you went to the art department and saw the pictures, but they were completely quiet and said nothing, and so I knew I was in trouble. And when I got back from my walk, Alex called me up to his office and he said, "I don't want you to worry, the pictures are extraordinary. They may not run as fashion pictures. They will run as a feature in a more artistic way, maybe. Do not worry, and thank you for them."
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. Well, with his eye, being an artist himself, he understood something more was there, and that was one of his great gifts. And he was somebody who, when you felt he believed in you, which I did, it gave me enormous confidence, but it also was a growing up experience.
Is there anybody in the industry that plays that role now, like Alex did then?
I have great respect for Fabian Baron.
Thank you.
I think he plays a very important role. And I think some photographers are so gifted that that they're so strong and gifted that they give the picture and get the picture that they want to give back. So to answer your question, is there any art director who is of that caliber? I'm not sure. But I think I don't compare, Fern.
Okay.
I don't know. I just don't.
Fair enough.
I think you move on, and we're in a different time, and the digital age, and we are and the enormous technical things that go on. It's a different situation, and I think it's very interesting. And I read everything, look at everything.
Good, we're going to
love
ask
it.
you about that in a second. You then became the fashion director of Vogue and one of the true believers and supporters of new talent at that time. Is there some designers you want to mention who you feel like you discovered?
That I discovered?
Anybody that you feel
No,
that way?
I can't think of any designer I discovered.
Or
But I know.
seriously supported?
Well, I think that Nicolas Guesquière is a genius. I think he's a fantastic designer. And where he goes now,
Were you surprised that he had that?
very surprised. But you know, there's a restlessness that goes with the artistic temperament, and you have to honor that. And there are other designers that I think it's extraordinary what is the explosion of talent that has happened with Michael Kors. And I think where he is today is just wonderful as a great American designer.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
when we talk about American designers, we have to talk about one of the best, Marc Jacobs, and then the other genius, Ralph Lauren. I mean, it's unbelievable, his empire. It's something else.
Okay. You also had a who's who of assistants who learned the ropes from you. Some who said you were not so easy to work for. From Vera Wang to Elizabeth Salzman and Josie, who I talked to just the other day about you. And he said that he learned to run and not walk because of you. Because going down a corridor, being asked for something, he wasn't quick enough. And he said to this day he runs. And that you were always the first one in the office and the last one to leave, even when you were at Allure as the editor.
I remember Arthur Elgore said to me, Polly, whenever you interview anybody, drop something, and if you pick it up quicker than they do, that they're not for you. Move on.
That's a good one.
Well, that's kind of terrible, I think.
That's a good one. All right, we divert a little bit. Can we talk for a couple of seconds about your famous shoot with Dick and Natasha Kinski? Is that probably one of your most famous ones?
Well, we were in California, in Los Angeles, and we were working in a studio of a photographer, a Californian, Los Angeles photographer, whose work was on the walls. And when I went in there, and Dick was testing lighting, I saw all of his pictures turned to the wall. And I thought, oh my God. Anyway, so Nastasia Kinski arrived, and we did a fashion shoot, which was, we photographed, did some pictures that were interesting, not great. And then I went upstairs to the dressing room where she was, because I wasn't really satisfied with what we were getting. And I said to her, do you have any favorite things that you love? Any pets, anything? She said, yes, I love snakes. I said, what kind of snake? And she said, I love a cobra or a python. I said, you mean
Big ones.
She said, I said, well, would you like to do a picture with a snake? And she said, that really interests me. Well, I ran downstairs, I got Dick, up he came, and we told him the story, and he said, so everybody go have lunch. And we went, called a trainer who brought the snake, the famous snake. And she held it, and I could tell that she was really fascinated by it and turned on to it and said, Polly, would you like to hold the snake? I said, I'd love to. And I did. And I think I've said some things that were a little suggestive because holding a snake is, you can't believe it. I mean, it's so... very seductive. And so Dick wanted, I'm not going to say anything more because I've said enough about it. And Dick said, will you do it, will you hold the snake and will you lie down and will you be nude? And she said, oh, sure. And she did, and I put the bracelet on. I shouldn't have done that. But anyway, and the snake wound up her body. Now, you understand the snake is defanged. I mean, otherwise we would be off limits. And it wound up her body very slowly. Very slowly. Dick was taking pictures as the snake moved up her body. Nobody was telling the snake what to do. The handler was behind me, and I was just watching on my knees behind Dick, and I could hardly believe what I was seeing. And when the snake got to her ear, he kissed her and put out his tongue, and the shoot was over.
It's pretty magical.
And I was crying. I mean, it was so moving, and so, I mean, it was just so moving. And Dick, all of us were thrilled. Dick, was so pleased. When the pictures came in, Dick called me and said, "Polly, you must come right now and come up and see the pictures, and you have to see the snake picture." And the rest of it is history.
Did they sell a lot of bracelets?
I don't know about those bracelets, but why'd I put that bracelet on?
Okay, so then after that, 91, you joined Allure magazine, which was a brand new magazine
Yes.
for Condé Nast.
Yes.
Anything you want to say about your time there?
I had a wonderful time there. I had a great editor, Linda Wells. She's a wonderful person, extremely intelligent, and knew exactly what she wanted for her magazine. And a pleasure to work with, really, because you knew, I mean, with Linda, you knew what she wanted. There was no gray matter. And it was, so it was a different kind of experience. There were some problems because we had to use different editors, photographers than Vogue. We had to use different models than Vogue. And that was challenging. And I think that's good because it pushes you to discover other talent. And if there was, I mean, there were even moments when there were clothes that I wanted to use and Vogue wanted to use them too. And I was told, "I'm sorry, we can't give you those clothes. Those clothes have been held for Vogue." Well, that didn't bother me. Move on. Pick something else. And that's good for you. It stretches your eye, and it's more challenging. I loved my years at Allure. It was just something else.
Great. And then in 99, on the eve of a new century, you left Allure saying you didn't want to be controlled any longer. And you then, a year or two later, in 2001, retired.
Yes.
With your beloved Henry.
Yes.
To a converted apple barn in South Kent, Connecticut, in Litchfield County. And you're surrounded by a 400-acre nature conservancy.
Yes.
That sounds pretty amazing.
I want to tell you, Fern, that after I retired, I did some freelance work, and then the World Trade Center explosion. And I worked at Allure with a wonderful woman named Ricky Vita Rivers. And her husband was having breakfast at the World Trade Center that day. He wasn't even working there. And he was lost. And one of the people lost. And I called her up and said, "I don't know what to say to you. I just want you to know I'm here for you." And she said, "Polly, you've done it. You've done it all. You go home to Henry. He's there." And that really brought me up quickly. I'm not very good, Fern, at doing little bits of this and little bits of that, and it was much better for us to get rid of the apartment and make the break and be with Henry and my children and my grandchildren, and another, again I say, another journey in your life.
totally is a wonderful chapter to have.
Yes, terrific.
So your house is filled with photography, I understand. Great portraits of you. By who?
Do I have portraits of myself?
Hanging in your house?
Yes, I have my I have my Avedon portrait, and I have a Helmut Newton portrait, and I have my dear friend, I've forgotten his name suddenly, have his portrait. You know who I mean. I can't remember.
I don't know.
No,
who you mean, I'm
anyway,
sorry.
and I have a few others,
Okay.
which I love.
I'm sure. And lots of family pictures. What do your children do? Did any of them go into fashion, creative, visual jobs?
My daughter Leslie is enormously creative, but she's in the real estate business, but she is a potter and a painter, and she's extremely creative and my dear, dear friend.
That's great.
And the person I was trying to remember is Arthur Elgore.
Oh, okay. So your days now, you are certainly not idle. You do Pilates, you work out, you walk, you swim, gardening, which is a very fulfilling exercise,
And golf.
and golf,
And ski.
and ski. At 88. Is Henry the cook at the house?
Yes.
And you
Henry.
put organic, healthy foods?
Very healthy.
One of the questions from the audience is, do you still eat grapefruit and cottage cheese with black pepper for lunch every day?
No, I don't.
So that's from somebody who worked with you.
Who are you?
There's no name on it.
Oh, is that you, Paul? Who
Doug-
is it?
Douglas Keeve?
Douglas
Douglas,
Keeve.
that's great.
How are you?
So, are there any regrets? Anything on your bucket list?
Any regrets? No.
Good.
No. I was the spoiled brat of the fashion world, and I knew it. I know it, and I loved it. I ran to work, and I have no regrets.
Good. What's still on your bucket list?
Oh, Christmas.
Oh. That's an easy one. Well, you were telling me earlier that you still want to go to India and places like that.
Oh,
but
I
you
would
haven't
love
been.
to go to India and Russia. Who's going to take me to India? Who's going to take me to Russia?
I'll take you to India.
Okay.
Okay, what do you make of the fashion scene today? The magazines, do you see them all? Is there any that you
Yes,
like
I
a
think
lot?
I think they're very interesting. Different magazines take a different twist. And they're all very different. And I think that, Italian Vogue is completely different. The magazines, the head of the magazine, the editor-in-chief, like our most famous one, Anna Wintour, it is the expression. She believes in her magazine and wants the magazine to be the way she wants it. And it's the most successful fashion magazine in the world. And she's a great talent. And her capacity is remarkable. The Italian Vogue, I think that she's very creative, and the magazine looks like it is what she wants. The editor-in-chief has the right to make the magazine what she wants it to be. And that's what you see.
What about Corinne's new magazine? Did you ever
I
want to
think
have your own?
Yes, of course I did. But I think I was considered a bit too wild. And not enough maybe business sense, which I don't agree with. I would have loved to have had my own magazine.
But it's not enough to be on a regret column, though.
No.
Okay. And what about the...
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll put something in.
Yeah.
What about the photographers? Can you talk about anybody who's doing new fabulous work today that stands out for you?
Well, I think that I don't know how to pronounce their names, but they're two guys, and I can't, what? That's it. I think they're enormously talented. Of course, I think Stephen Meisel is a great talent. I think there are lots of photographers out there that are good, really good.
And I know we have Bruce with us tonight, too, I think.
What?
I believe Bruce is with us tonight, Bruce.
Bruce, are you here?
He is
Well,
here.
anyway, he's a great.
What about the models? Who was the most difficult or the best to work with?
The most difficult model I ever worked with, I won't mention.
Oh, come on.
And the most difficult celebrity I ever worked with was Raquel Welch. And Faye Dunaway wasn't easy, and Barbara Streisand wasn't easy. Sorry.
You want to tell us which model?
No, I don't.
Is she still working?
Yes.
Okay, and the designers. I know you've kept all your authentic Jill Sanders and Helmut Langs. You still wear Marc Jacobs and Prada and your Vera Wang pants.
My Vera Wang pants.
Are there any young designers working today besides Nicholas that you mentioned that you admire? Like
Yes,
some of the new
I think-
up-and-comers?
Yeah, I think Zach Posen is interested. I think the guy who's just been made, who took Nicholas's place, Alex Wu.
Alex Wang.
Wang. Very
And
interesting.
Jason Wu is the other one.
Jason Wu, yes, but I'm talking about Alex.
Alex.
I have something in my throat.
What advice do you have for up-and-coming stylists, editors, designers? Anything you want to share for the young talent
Yes,
here?
I think that everything I said earlier in that TV, in that little short film, I think you have to do your homework. I think you have to research. You have to look at photography in the past. You have to study artists. I mean, I think there's so many interesting, really interesting artists, and you have to keep your eyes open on the street. I love the street. I love what goes on in the street. You have to be aware and search and be interested. It's not easy. It is not easy, if you care enough, I think the program of Project Runway is fantastic. And I love watching it because my granddaughter will not let me not watch it. And I mean, it brings a spirit and a belief and something that young people feel they can strive towards by watching these young people who have no money and they work so hard, and the ones that lose is heartbreaking. But
Have you not been a judge on that show?
No.
God, we should try and make that happen for you.
Let's do that.
All right, we'll work on it. But do you miss being, up in Connecticut, miss that street energy and pulse that?
Yes.
Yes.
I miss that. I miss the theater, and I miss the ballet. I'm an avid moviegoer. I could go to a movie every other day. I mean, the last movie I saw that I thought was really amazing was Ben Affleck's movie. It's called, Argon.
Argo.
It's a fantastic movie, and so is Lincoln.
Lincoln's amazing, yes.
Yeah, but I haven't seen the story of Pi.
Oh, the story Pie is very good.
Have you seen
I
it?
saw it. Saw it.
And the book was
The
great.
book is great.
So, and I mean, you.
I actually just read the book in India a couple of weeks ago.
Fantastic.
What's your take on social media, bloggers, Twitter, all that? Would you take to that if you were still working?
Yes, I think I would.
But you're not on the computer much now, because
I have a computer, but my nephew is in the audience, and he knows that I don't know very much about the computer, but he's going to help me. I mean, I can do emails, but I'm not very good at anything else, and neither is Henry.
But she does answer the phone when you call her. All right, let's see these 2 more questions from the audience. Let's see. What look, whether current or not, are you in love with right now?
Say it again.
What look, current or not, are you in love with right now? A fashion look. Is there anything that kind of makes you...
I have to think. No, I love a lot of it. I'll probably think of a million things after I leave, but I can't think right now. But I almost every designer, I can find something that really interests me that I wish I had or something. I love Prada and wear a lot of it because I'm comfortable in it. Jill Sander.
Do all your daughters take your clothes from the closet?
No, they don't wear any of my clothes. They don't, because they dress their own way.
Do you have granddaughters who are covered
But
in
I have a
them?
granddaughter coming up. We'll see. She's just turned 13.
Well, she'll be very lucky if she gets to your closet.
Well, it's there if she wants it. I mean.
And in times of doubt, how did you find the bravery to follow your own voice?
How did I find the bravery to follow
Follow
my
your
own
own
voice?
In times of doubt, if you've had times
In
of
times of what?
doubt.
In times of doubt. I don't have trouble trying to find my voice. If you love something, I'm not sure I believe in doubt.
Good.
Because if you're learning and if you're curious, something else takes on, and a doubt can be erased. I think doubt is a negative feeling, and I don't think, I'm not a negative person. I think there's no need to be negative. It's much better to feel rosy, to look forward to tomorrow, and that's what I do with great pleasure.
Well, I think on that note, with Polly's voice that she found, thank you.